looking for Andy Clarke.
That's me speaking. Is that Germaine Greer?
It is.
Hello, thank you very much for calling us today. I understand that you're at the Gloucester Guildhall tonight with the disappearing woman.
I am. It's true what you understand.
That's lucky. What's that all about then?
Well, it depends. I never know until I start talking, really.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's usually to do with something that's happened during the day, something silly. But the idea of the disappearing woman is, there's a number of ideas. One is that nowadays we don't have women, we have girls.
Ah.
That is to say, you're not allowed to put on weight, you're not allowed to have much in the way of hips. You're supposed to be mistaken for a boy from the back.
Oh, right.
And girls worry a lot about that and won't eat anything and fret if they've got a fat bottom.
Blimey.
And the problem is, of course, that women are fat-bottomed creatures.
They are. Well, yes, naturally, maybe.
And if you're going to turn into one, you're going to grow a bottom. But growing a bottom for most girls is an utter disaster.
Well, why is that, do you think?
Well, it's an interesting question. I don't know that I'm a good enough anthropologist to explain it. I mean, it's always been the case that less is more where women are concerned. We want women to be, well, always, in Western developed world, it has always been the case that women have to be very, very slim. You know, no woman is ever too rich or too slim.
Yeah, magazines, of course, they portray that as well, and they con people into thinking that's what women should look like, when in fact a lot of it's trickery anyway, with cameras and face brushing and stuff like that, you know.
Well, it definitely is. But the problem, I think the difficulty is that they can't reverse that. They can't start showing you. They've tried to show you women that were size 12, and nobody liked them. Nobody cottoned onto them. They weren't effective at all. They weren't good marketing tools. So, I mean, the difficulty is you market clothes by hanging them on a pair of shoulders with almost nothing underneath, and then great long legs. The problem gets worse when you realise that the clothes in the shops are like that there's no room for a bottom. And then it becomes really crazy because you just can't find anything to wear even when you're a size 12. If what you get to be a size 16, which is something like the average British size, then it's a nightmare. There's just nothing out there. And what is out there is awful. You just you wouldn't wear it. It's dreary, it's not smart, it's not well cut, it's not well finished. These days, of course, it's made in Bangladeshi factories where people get killed.
So your show, then, is it ad-lib? How does it work?
Oh, it's not ad-lib exactly. I don't read it off a piece of paper. That would be horrible.
Yeah.
But it's generally things I've been thinking about. It's a bit like... I might even do a riff on what's happened in Cleveland, in Ohio.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole business of those girls being in that house, which looked sus from the beginning with its boarded windows and everything, and they knew there were people in there. When do you find people living in houses with boarded up windows?
Well, exactly.
And nobody banged on the door when they were looking for these girls. It's just extraordinary. So now they're going to have to sit down and think, why didn't we try harder?
Yeah.
And there's almost no answer to that question. There were a bunch of disappearing women. They vanished for 10 years. And no one really looked for them.
You can't, when you hear it like that, you can't actually believe that could happen in this day and age, in the society we live in, could you really? It's just unbelievable.
Except that it's happened in Austria, it's happened in Belgium.
Yeah.
The women have been kidnapped, females have been kidnapped and held prisoner. I mean, the really ghastly thing about this is they're going to have to question these poor women about how many times they bore children. They think at least 6.
That's shocking.
Now, are these women going to be implicated in the infanticide of these children? Because they think they're buried in the backyard. I mean, it's just unbelievably horrible. But just as horrible in a different way is last week's story about, oh gosh, our maternity services are rubbish. Well, everybody knows that. Everyone who's been through it. Some people are lucky and have a wonderful experience. But it seems to be pretty much down to luck. And then suddenly they're all explaining, yeah, well, we haven't got enough midwives. They've been saying we haven't got enough midwives for 30 years that I know of. So why haven't they got enough midwives? Why isn't it important?
If I take you back to the 60s,
that'll take a bit of doing.
I was actually born in the 60s, so I don't remember much about it. I was born in the middle. But burn your bra was a sort of, I wouldn't say a common theme, but it was something that started around then.
Except it never happened.
It didn't happen. No, was it just a metaphor then, was it? Do you think?
Well, I'm not even sure that it was even a metaphor. I think it was probably always just a lie.
Really?
But, I mean, the story goes that the feminists wanted to mount a demonstration against the Miss World event in Atlanta, I think it was, in Georgia. And what they were going to do was they were going to fill a rubbish bin with all the accoutrements of femininity. Right. Which in those days included, merry widow, wasp waist, corselets and rope petticoats and mesh stockings and suspender belts. But there was also false eyelashes and false hair and all that sort of business. I don't know exactly what they turned up with, but they were going to do this outside while the Miss World thing was going on inside. And they filled up their bin. The bit I like is that they had asked the city fathers for permission to do their demonstration, and they'd been given permission. So when they got their bin full, somebody said, "Why don't we set fire to it?" And the women said, "Oh, we can't do that. We didn't get a permit for a fire." And they never burnt anything.
Oh, really?
No, which always makes me laugh, because it's so typical of women that, they go and ask the city fathers, "Please, can we have our demonstration?" And then when they had it, they'd behave themselves. No bras were ever burnt, really.
Do you think so? I mean, now we have laws too, and I use these words in inverted commas to protect women. And do you think these laws have gone far enough? And do you think they ever can go far enough to protect people in the workplace? The women allegedly are paid the same amount as men. They have the same opportunities, allegedly again. What's your thoughts around that?
Well, by the way you're talking, that this parity in pay we haven't got. Women will earn less over their working lifetime. They will also do all the unpaid work, bar a tiny amount. I think it's something like 96% of housework in the UK. It depends which analysis you read to discover exactly who's doing all the work. And it isn't the case that they've achieved equality. I mean, what happened was a wonderful scam in a way, because the elite trade unions, where people were paid huge amounts of money because of their power as organised labour, they never accepted women on equal terms. Then when they were forced to consider the issue, they came up with a completely nonsensical idea, which is that women should be paid equal pay for work of equal value. Now, as labour activists, they should have known that work has no value. No. Work is worth what you can force the employer to pay for it. Yeah. You can't expect, just by doing a job, to be paid what the job is worth, because the idea is a bankrupt one. So what happened with women was that women's work was permanently assessed as of less value. And it's very obvious in very simple situations. I don't know if you remember when the cleaners got their retrospective pay award, because somebody looked at the work they were doing and it was exactly the same as the men. So the employer had to pay those arrears. And that looked like being a big success. But you'll notice that it hasn't happened again. And I teach in universities for my living. I'm retired now, but we had cleaners at the university and we had janitors. They did virtually the same jobs, but the men got a great deal more than the women. Like hairdressing, phenomenally badly paid. What do lots of girls do when they leave school? They go and do hairdressing and earn barely enough to live on. If that.
You know, in 2005, when you were in the Celebrity Big Brother house, did you have any sort of preconceived ideas before entering the show? Did you think that would happen, that you would sort of leave as you did?
Well, I was dreading it, if that's what you mean.
Really?
But I needed to raise the money for my rainforest charity, which was bumping along. Because I've got workers to pay, and I was paying my workers in the Rainforest Project out of taxed income, which was crazy. We don't do that anymore. We set up a charity and got it organised properly. But in those days, it was coming straight out of my pocket, And I really needed to raise the money that had been agreed. People say, why did you go into the Big Brother house? And the answer is simple. I went in for money.
Yeah. And to raise...
But it was so horrible. I mean, I knew it would be horrible being watched by cameras all the time. And I knew it would be horrible never being able to get away from people because I'm basically solitary. I'm also extremely claustrophobic. It was worse than I expected in the sense that, you know, the kitchen had old filth in it from the last time someone was on the set. Ooh. And I don't know what the water was that we were drinking, but I